Imagine a career that has literally shaped society as what we know today, what has advanced buildings, bridges, tunnels, or even dams. A career that has brought prosperity to many communities around the world, even in our nation. That career would be welding. Welding is a vital part of our world, but many young people don't know much about it. They don't know much from the history of welding to the advancements that have been made in the recent years to what it has done for society as a whole over its whole lifetime. In the beginning, it started off as oxyacetylene torch cutting or oxyacetylene torch welding. That is done with a mixture of two gases, which is oxygen and acetylene. These two gases mixed together burn very hot and make it capable for any metal to be cut. With that being said, it is also used to help bond the two metals by heating up the area around it and then using a filler metal that helps seal the gap and strengthen it. A filler metal is any metal that is added to the weld to give extra strength or extra volume to it. This makes the weld better, it helps more. It was most popular in the 1800s, and that was the main use, or that was the main way that welding was done back then. As it progressed in the 1890s, a man named C.L. Coffin invented arc welding. Arc welding is the use of electricity to help melt the metal while heating up the piece that you would be welding. It became more popular than oxyacetylene welding because it was a faster, stronger way to do it. Whenever it came out, or it came out before World War One, when World War One rolled around, it became a very vital part of our success in it. Whenever Britain's manufacturing plants actually couldn't keep up with the production of vehicles and weapons, so they turned to welding to help make their ships, their tanks, their airplanes, everything. Welding was a big part of World War One, and it almost helped us win the war. Then, in the 1940s, TIG welding was invented. TIG welding is another form of arc welding, but it is done with a shielding gas formed around it. This was the first type of welding that used shielding gas. This type of welding allowed for thinner metals to be welded, and when it's thinner, it's going to be lighter. So it was used for aircraft grade steel or aluminum, just metals that could be used on aircrafts. TIG welding was the main way for aircrafts to be put together whenever it was when it first came about. In the later years, another form of welding came about. It is another version of arc welding. It is called MIG, or metal inert gas welding. MIG welding is a form that has a continuous wire feed. So as you're welding along, the wire is filling in that gap, so you don't have to use an independent hand to fill in that metal. There are two types of MIG welding. One uses a shielding gas dispersed around the weld to protect that weld from oxygen or any gases getting trapped underneath that, which can cause porosity. Porosity is bubbles or pinholes in your weld that causes it to be weak and can fail easily. The type that uses shielding gas is more common and easier to use, but has its disadvantages. You have to run gas lines to it, you have to have gas. It's a big ordeal. The other version is flux core welding, which has the protection from anything on the inside. It's like a little tube with the wire around it with the flux inside of it. As you weld, that flux covers that weld, and it is pretty good because you don't have to run a shielding gas around it. After they had these three basic ways of welding, they have started to advance and make new or improve on ways of welding that help better society and just the industry. The first type is laser welding. Laser welding can be done with filler wire and shielding gas, but both are optional. The amount of liquid metal on your weld seam is called the weld pool. Weld pools are dependent on many factors like the speed that it's traveling, the power, and it's pretty advanced now. It's an expensive process, but very fast and eliminates human error because it is done by a machine. This allows for precision welds to be done because it is done almost perfectly. It's very fast, but it is also very expensive, so it's not particularly popular, but it helps with big projects because it actually cuts down the cost too. The next advancement that has been made was linear friction welding. It is done by pressing the two pieces of metal together and actually just rubbing them. So that heats up that metal and then eventually will bind the two together. Before, it was done with a hydraulic system, which was very wasteful and actually kind of harmful to the environment. Now it is done through electricity. So it is run by a motor, and it is actually better than the hydraulic. It's used in many industries because it's very versatile, and it is also cheaper. It's an easy machine to run. There's not as much power, not as much time, and this machine also eliminates human error, which is a big plus. As your machines are getting more advanced and becoming better, so does your material used. So they came up with alloys. Alloys are a mixture of two metals that produce different properties. Metal has 7 or 8 different properties, which determines what kind of metal you can use. Some metals are very brittle, while some metals are very ductile. Each metal has a purpose for a different job. You would want a harder steel if you're going to be cutting, or if you want it to be ductile, it's going to be taking impact. Alloys even have a different effect on the heat affected zone. The heat affected zone is the area around the weld that gets very hot. As the heat affected zone grows bigger, the metal in that area is affected and can change the grain structure, so then it changes the properties of that metal. You have to have the right metal for each job. If you were to make an airplane out of steel, it would be too heavy to be in the air, so they use aluminum or aluminum alloys. Alloys have become very versatile in different jobs because they offer different properties which every welder, every business, every person needs. If you have a hard metal that's taking impact, it's going to break very easily. So having a softer metal or a ductile piece of metal, it's going to be able to withstand that more. So as employees or people in the welding industry are being trained, they used to do it, just run their welds, do everything on actual metal, but now they have made a way to do it virtually. Virtually, you can get training experience without wasting materials. It becomes very cost effective, and it allows the person training or the employer to see how the person is welding. It's very easy because they can replay the feed and they can actually see what is going on. The welding industry has come very far. It started as small and has grown very much. In those years that it has been around, it has done a lot for society. There's a high demand for welders. Welding is a very low cost, effective way to build things, and it is involved in almost every industry that there is. With that being said, there is going to be a predicted 375,000 welders that just aren't going to be there. There's going to be a shortage. So with the demand and the area for growth, welding's always going to offer jobs. It's always going to be offered to anyone that is willing to learn and willing to do it. Welding is always going to have an opening. It'll never go away. It's always going to be needed. So there will be jobs for every person in the community, the world, even our nation. And it doesn't discriminate. It's even allowing people that are in jail to get the vocational training that is needed. They get 160 hours of lecture and 140 hours hands-on. They're getting the exact same education that everyone else is getting that goes into the welding field. And it offers them a chance to get back into the world, get back and do something right. It is offering them a second chance, and it doesn't give up. Most prisons have adopted this way and are trying to help combat the shortage of welders with this. When there's going to be a shortage of welders, then stuff is going to start diminishing. Without welders, we wouldn't have bridges, power plants, dams, any of that. And without welders to keep going, it's all going to start to diminish and fall apart. Welders help hold society together. They are involved in everything that you use in day-to-day life. Microwaves, coffee pots, phones, they're all involve a different type of welding. And it also expands cities and travel. It allows for people to live how they want and do what they want, no matter what. Everything that you know, all your comforts, everything that you enjoy doing has been touched by welding. So it's going to help with everything. With that being said, welding allowed for skyscrapers to be built. These skyscrapers let cities be smaller, and it boosted economies because they didn't take up this great big space and people didn't have to travel everywhere. With the skyscrapers, you can have 8 businesses in the same building. With that, the businesses wouldn't have to pay to have a building made, which would involve welders to come in and weld that. With that, it allowed them to expand and actually help our economy and our world and our society. And like I said before, welding is also used in the upkeep of buildings. If buildings start to fall apart, they can be welded back together or put back together in some sort of welding. I interviewed my professor from WCCC, Westmoreland County Community College. He has been welding for 20 plus years and was actually a machinist before he started welding. Excuse me. I asked him if he thought that welding has impacted society or influenced society or the world. He brought up that everything that you come across is involved with some sort of welding, and that there's actually going to be the shortage of welders. The laptop that he responded to me on, the case was welded together to be provided for that. Next question I had was how much welding has changed in his line of work. And he started out many years ago and added that things are changing due to customer needs. Customer needs causes the welding industry to get their engineers to design something that can do what the customer needs it to do. Despite what welding has done for society and the recent advances and the extensive history that it has, the need for welders is expected to grow by 26% by the end of 2020. With that being said, it touches everything that we use in day-to-day life. Even the desk that I'm recording this on has welded together parts. With that being said, everything that I've mentioned in this presentation, I hope will be a part of my future as a welder, which I actually want to do underwater welding, which is another form of welding that allows dams and tunnels and bridges to be upkept and built. Welders need everyone's help to keep it around, because without younger generations getting involved, it doesn't stand a chance. Older welders are retiring or even dying in some cases, and there's no one to fill that. The world will always need welders, and I hope that people can give back to that. Thank you.